Hi everyone, my name is Sandeep. I am currently a debater from Hobart and William Smith Colleges, and I am the coach of the University of Colombo Arts Faculty Debate Team. I am also, I also debated for St. Thomas's College and captain for 1 year. And it's exciting to talk about motions today. And for today's video, we are going to be talking about the Royal Institute of Colombo ISDC finals motion, and particularly, we'll be focusing on a few characteristics as we go through the entirety of the motion and how to prep for it and be prepared for a round. So like a good debate, I'm going to start my timer. Cool. So the info slide reads, on July 13th, 2024, Donald Trump, a former president of the US and the Republican Party's presumptive nominee in the 2024 presidential election, survived an assassination on assassination attempt while addressing a campaign rally near Butler, Pennsylvania. Trump was shot and wounded in his right ear but sustained no fatal injuries or major injuries. The motion reads, this House, as the Democratic Party of the US, prefers a world where the assassination of Donald Trump has been successful. Now, just flagging, it is incredibly important to take a good read of motions always. If you are prepping for a school tournament or a university tournament, always read the motion 2 to 3 times for a few reasons. But the most important is because every motion asks a specific thing from you. This motion is asking you to think on the perspective of the Democratic Party, but secondly, it's a prefers a world motion. So that means then that you have to automatically start thinking about two worlds. One world where the assassination was successful and the other where it was not, and what does those two things apply? And that's incredibly important way to kind of analyze this type of debate. So we will first focus on setup, very important. And this usually goes into the role of your first speaker, so the Prime Minister. I think there are a few things specifically in this motion that we need to really focus on. The first is the burden of proof. What specifically do you have to prove in this debate as government and as opposition to him? I think it's simple. It is to prove that once Trump's assassination attempt was successful, on government side, it makes it significantly easier for the Democratic Party to potentially win the current election and the elections that are going to come beyond that. Now, important the way I phrase that. I didn't say it's a definitive win, but rather I'm going to spend all of my time in government trying to prove that the chances I have of winning now go from 5 to 50%, and explaining why that is exponentially so important for the Democratic Party. I think that teams often try to do this thing where they try to prove this ultimate win, where they're definitely going to win elections and saying specifically why that matters. But the issue is that it's often difficult to prove that kind of thing. And I don't think that we actually expect teams to prove definitively that they are going to win now. You can go ahead and do so, but I would always say to just try to think a little bit more holistically about the chances and explain to the judge why those chances are really important. So on opposition side, I think there are two interesting burdens that can be run. The first burden is to say that you still won't win even if Trump died, or two, that you don't need this to happen to win. And you could do a third one and say that this is just going to make it much harder to win. So there are three ways in which you can approach this kind of round, especially in opposition side. The problem I think that both teams are probably going to identify is that Trump is a threat to the success of the Democratic Party. He is a powerful leader. He's incredibly influential. He has a very strong following, and these are religiously people that believe in the Trump ideology and that it is shaping how elections are going to be run. In terms of how you characterize this debate, I think you just need the characterization is relatively simple. It is just saying that we are currently in a world where Trump is probably going to win, and there's a large amount of movement towards right-wing populism. And why once Trump really enters the arena once again as president, how that's going to really shape how we view politics, and the policies that are going to be passed are going to be detrimentally changed. And the reason why I'm praising all of these kinds of things is to really explain to the judge about the threat of Trump winning, just on a very general level, even less so about the Democratic Party specifically. And I think for stances in this debate, it's very simple. The stance from government is we want Trump, we would have preferred that Trump's assassination was successful because it helps us win or it gives us a bigger chance. And for opposition, it's just we don't think this is necessary. We think we could have won without Trump, or we think this is going to make it much harder for the Democratic Party to have a chance in this election and in the future elections because now perceptions are going to be changed dramatically. Cool. In terms of arguments, I think this is very important. In a prefers the word motion, it's comparative analysis, right? And what does that mean? That means that whenever you're using your arguments, you must always explain why the other side cannot achieve this kind of thing. So you have to kind of paint pictures of both worlds when you are debating in a prefers the word motion. I think you do comparative analysis in general, but I think it's especially important when you have to do in a prefers the word motion because you're painting two pictures to the judge. Often teams that are able to paint a really negative picture of the other side and explain why their side so much better often take the lead. So for side government, I think the arguments are plentiful, but go around the central root argument of the fact that this just improves our chances of winning. Additionally, it also just helps us establish long-term stability as a democratic party and kind of defuel the anger and tensions between like Democrats and Republicans, especially moderates. I think this is an argument that I really like, just because it allows us to kind of explain what the Trump effect is. And the Trump effect is often polarizing groups of people in a society and questioning things like the rule of law. And what does that really do to people on the ground? And specifically, how does that shape politics? And it shapes politics in multiple ways. It shapes politics in ways where there's anger and tension and conflict, like that we saw with attacks that were happening to government in the US once Trump didn't win previously. But it is also moves beyond that and also specifically talks about how people just are so desensitized and disengaged because they just feel like there's no hope. Because once they see Trump, they just don't want to vote. And that directly impacts people that are moderates who want somebody else but don't feel like somebody else can come in because they just feel like there's so much antagonism against saying that they don't like Trump. So arguments are vast, but you must always try to center that premise on a very simple argument, which is that we want long-term stability as a party, and we want long-term stability within electorates where they feel that they can vote for moderate leaders, and we think that we can engage better with other Republican like nominees that are more sane and more willing to kind of engage on more practical grounds, like and so and so. And there are many, many Republican leaders that you can probably um, uh, use as examples. I don't, none of them come right now, but there are multiple. So that's kind of how it goes. Pretty simple stuff, I would say. In terms of opposition, I think opposition central arguments are that one, you don't need Trump to die. In fact, we think Trump being in power, especially in a world where Kamala Harris is the complete opposite, is a good thing. And you need to really explain what she represents and why she's so opposing to Trump. And that's for a few reasons, but a few of them are that she's young. And the reason why that's important is because the entire the Republican Party's campaigning against Biden was just the fact that he was old and now that no longer exists. But two, she is somebody that has been in government and served in different capacities for so much longer. Three, she's just really smart and very good in debate and can often stand her ground very, very successfully. And finally, you can just say people like her more. People relate to her more. Minority communities relate to her more. African American communities are so showing so much more support. It's rejuvenating the campaigning process. Why do we need first Trump to die? And that's a very valid question that you should push on government. This extends further than that and said, in fact, it's not just that we don't need it, it's just that when it happens, it just creates significantly larger amounts of tension where you have conspiracy theories going around that, oh, the Democratic Party started doing these kinds of things. And and how you explain why those are really harmful was that even if they're proven to be false, once a story goes up on the news, especially on places like Instagram and TikTok, where tensions are already really high, that one statement by some random person can catalyze so much levels of like antagonism and conflict between people who are supporters of either party, and why that's detrimental to election processes. And finally, you can just say that who knows, the Republican Party can capitalize on this very sad loss and push a new leader that was a huge Trump supporter, and why that could also potentially make them win, right? Because you can just say, hey, we don't know. Trump is like a very charismatic leader, and that's pretty certain that you can find another charismatic leader who was very closely aligned with Trump and could potentially win. So these are all questions you must ask yourself as you go into argumentation. In terms of analysis, I believe in very simple structures for analysis. It's two very simple questions. Why is it true and why is it important? Why is it true for government to say that we do need stability in the Democratic Party and we just can't get it with Trump? And you explain what the Trump effect is. Trump is able to campaign on a host of very controversial ideas that are often unfactual, but are legitimized very cleanly by him and by his party, and often people don't fact check him on time. Trump also has now proven that he is more capable than the previous president elect, which was Joe Biden, and the effects that has to the Democratic Party in saying and proving that a lot of what Trump says isn't true. Explain to me, why is it necessary for this person to no longer exist? Secondly, why is it important? And that's a question you can ask on multiple levels. Why is it important for the current candidate that is running for the Democratic Party? Why is it important for the long-term stability of this party? Why is it necessary and significantly going to shape future elections? And why should we care about that? Ask questions about why does it matter for the judge to hear what you're saying in your argumentation. And I think these two questions really push debaters to really question and ask and find analysis that judges are looking for to fill when you say that you have an argument about a specific thing. Cool. That's basically all my analysis so far. I also really wanted to just particularly emphasize that when it comes to clashes, I think we must ensure that we focus particularly on, I think, just two things in this debate. And the first is on the success rate of parties and why we should care about them. And secondly, on image and perception of this assassination attempt and how does that impact the Democratic Party specifically. There's a very specific actor that you are both debating from government and opposition, and that is the Democratic Party and their interests, and who can best serve those interests. So for judges, the first thing that I am asking from teams is to tell me why I should specifically consider this to be a good idea for the Democratic Party, and how and why does it link to their goals. So if you can answer that specific clash on success, I think that you can have a very, very good shot of winning this round. But yeah, that is all I have right now. Yeah, please feel free to reach out to me at any point in time. Thank you so much.